Michael Yardney for our regular Rich Habits, Poor Habits podcast. Hello again, Tom Corley.
Hey, Michael, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. And every week we discuss some of the success habits of the rich people and the disempowering habits of poor people. Now, you're probably aware that Tom and I have written a book together called Rich Habits, Poor Habits that's doing very well in Australia and the United States. And interestingly, Tom, the United Kingdom has picked it up as well, and it's going very well there.
Well, that's great news. I know we had a big retail customer last week that picked up a lot of copies, and so it looks like there's some buzz and there's some interest, and you and I are hoping that we can get our word out through that book because there's a lot of great information in there.
Now, some of it is discussed in these podcasts, but if you haven't got a copy, just go to Amazon and you can get your ebook copy of it, or go to richhabitspoorhabits.com and you can actually order your hard copy. By the way, if you're enjoying these regular sessions Tom and I have, please pass the message forward, help somebody else. We want to get the message out on how to become more successful and rich. So pass it on through Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whichever way you're watching this. Now, Tom, today I want to go through some of the things you learned in your 5-year study of the wealthy people that you did quite a while ago. And you found that there were certain traits they have, and of course, traits that the non-wealthy, the non-rich people have. Now, this is not a judge of people, but most of us do want to have more in life and get more, and we realize you can't have more until you change. So let's work out what you shouldn't do, Tom. I'd like to discuss what in your study you found of the 19 traits of negative people. Tom, let's go through them one by one. One of the ones you found was that negative people tend to be pessimistic.
Yeah, and this has so much impact on so many things, Michael. It's see, when you're pessimistic, you see dead ends, you see stop signs, you see no hope. So where's your motivation? It stops you dead in your tracks. Conversely, wealthy people are optimists. They see solutions to every problem, and the pessimists see problems everywhere. So you're missing out on all sorts of opportunities.
Of course, Tom, this goes back to what we've often spoken about, the reticular activating system, that system in your brain that subconsciously, unconsciously focuses your attention. So if you're watching this video today and you drove to work or you went out somewhere, you probably didn't see any white Toyotas on the street. But if you were looking out for a car, instantly, what do you see, Tom? You see white Toyotas everywhere, don't you?
That's right. That reticular activating system, or the RAS, it's the radar system in the brain. It's in the limbic system. It's part of the limbic system, which is on alert, looking for things that you're focused on. So if you're focused on goals and dreams, it's going to look for things in your environment that will help you realize your goals and your dreams. When you're a pessimist, you don't have goals and dreams because you don't believe that you can achieve them. So the RAS is kind of shut down. The toggle switch is shut off.
So all you find is negative things, because if you wake up in the morning and say, gee, the economy's rotten, it's difficult for business, it's difficult for investing, the rich are getting rich and I'm missing out, that's exactly what you find, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah, that's right. You focus on what you think about all the time. And when you're a pessimist, you're only focusing on the problems and you're just seeing them as stopping you in your tracks. You're not really thinking about the potential solutions to those problems because you're a pessimist.
Of course, if you wake up in the morning and think, this is the best time in the world to be alive, guess what? You're going to find dogs and trees and birds and parkland and business doing well, and life's going to be good, isn't it?
It is. And the other thing is the people that you associate with, if you're a pessimist, are going to kind of try and disassociate themselves from you if they're optimists. So you're literally shutting off future opportunities because people, like-minded people, success-minded people, they have the ability to open doors that are shut to everyone else. If you're a pessimist, you're essentially closing down that success relationship.
Now, if you're watching this, I bet you there's somebody out there, Tom, who's thinking, oh, that's easy for you to say, Tom. You're in New Jersey and what business is good. It's easy for you to say, Michael, you're in real estate and Australia real estate's doing really well. But you don't understand my situation. I'm different. I haven't got a good education, or where I'm living in the world isn't so good. The answer is there are things you've got in your control and there are things you haven't got in your control. And Tom and I have discussed those before. And so therefore, don't focus on those things that you can't control and let them overwhelm you. I guess rather than, but it is what it is, but the answer is you can have useful beliefs about them. So if things are tough where you are at the moment, rather than letting them overwhelm you, find what good beliefs you can have about it. A useful belief could well be, well, yes, the economy in my city, in my state, in my country isn't that good at the moment, but that means that there are still people who are making money and there always are opportunities. Find a way of twisting it to make it useful. Tom, the other thing you came up with is that negative people have doubts.
Yeah, so, doubts exist when you are in a negative mindset. This is why it's so important to be in a positive mindset, because it eliminates or waters down the doubts. When you have doubts, that means you're questioning yourself. And I can tell you, I went through this because with the Rich Habits business, I call it the Rich Habits business, my book business. My Rich Habits was published in 2010. And for almost 4 years, it languished. And I had a lot of people telling me, you're wasting too much time. When you have doubts, when you fall into a negative mindset, you start listening to all the negative feedback from people and you start believing, yeah, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm on the wrong track. Well, thank God I didn't listen to those people, because in 2013, Rich Habits exploded, and it completely was a watershed year for me. Had I listened to all of those negative people and given into my doubts, you and I wouldn't be talking today, Michael.
Part of that continuation of that is the other trait of negative people you came up with, Tom, and that's that they've got fear, because fear and doubts and worry all sort of mix together, don't they?
Yes, and fear exists in everyone. Everyone, even, I remember I wrote an article for, I think, Business Insider, and I referenced a story that Donald Trump had told about how he was, afraid. A lot of the people around him, and including himself, were afraid about, doing The Apprentice. They ruminated over it for a long time. And finally, Donald Trump said, look, I'm not going to let fear control my decision-making on this. I'm going to do it. And to hell with whatever happens, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do it. He fought back that fear, and look what happened. It became one of the top shows on television, and it really literally transformed him into a TV star overnight.
Tom, I think one of the things you said is very important for people to understand, that successful people, rich people, the people at the top of the tree still have fears. Interestingly, though, they use their fears to motivate them rather than hold them back. So I've heard that some of the top tennis players in the world still drive themselves even harder because of the fear of not being the top, not being the best. So every success I've had is on the other side of fear. You have to get through that. If you're not a little bit afraid, if you're not a little bit uncomfortable, you're in your comfort zone. And that really means that you're not moving forward, Tom.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. In fact, an interesting story. I read a book Jimmy Connors wrote, who is a famous tennis player in my generation anyway. And he said,
I'm old enough to remember him, Tom.
He fought so hard to become number one. And he said, it was almost like a curse, he said, because when I became number one, that now all of a sudden I had this fear of falling out and becoming number two. And so he said, I doubled my efforts just to stay number one. So you're right. Fear can drive you either to recede into the darkness or it can elevate you to higher levels. It all depends on how you react to it.
Well, part of the fear is also worry. That was another of the traits of negative people you discovered, Tom.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Everybody worries. I had an old boss who used to walk around the office and say, never worry, because worry worries you. I never understood what the hell it meant, Michael. I thought he was just babbling, But as I got older, I realized his point is, when you worry, you actually create more worries. And then you start worrying about the things that you're worrying about. It's like a domino effect. So what you have to do is say, look, here's a worry. It just entered my mind. I'm not going to worry about it anymore. I'm canceling that thought. I'm just going to control what I can control, do the best that I can, and we'll see how the chips fall. But I'm not going to think and ruminate about these possible bad scenarios happening in my life.
Well, Tom, if you look back at the things you and I worried about individually 5 years ago, 10 years ago, how relevant are they today? They're not really, are they?
No, I've always worried about being poor because we were raised poor. And I always worried about when I used to commute into New York City, I would see these homeless people on the streets. There was a lot of them when in the 70s and the 80s. And I always would feel that, that could be me. That I used to think about that, Michael, all the time. And and here I am. I've got 3 businesses. I've put 3 kids through college, and I still have that thought in my head. And I have to fight it every day. So here I am. Anybody would say you're a millionaire, you're rich, you're successful, you've got best-selling books, you've got all of this great stuff going on, and you're still thinking and worrying about being poor. And I say, yes, I do, but I fight that thought every day. I try and cancel it.
Well, rather than making it the overwhelming thought that's driving what you're doing, you're actually making it a thought that's motivating you to be successful, Tom. And that's one of the big differences between negative people and positive people. You've twisted it around. Tom, I like the next one that you'd come up with, that negative people gossip. I don't like gossip.
One of the studies that I like on gossiping, the study concluded that almost 95% of all gossip is negative. It's people talking behind their backs. It's like you and I who have this really great friendship. It's as if I would say to your coworker, Liz, or somebody else, that Michael this or that Michael that. Well, that's what goes on in the offices around the world. 95% of the population, the working population. You eventually find out about that gossip, and it destroys those relationships. It actually impairs your ability to work with people who are gossiping about you. And that could be a real problem if you have a customer or client that you are bad-mouthing that gets wind of it. You could lose that customer or client. So when I did the radio interview with Dave Ramsey, who was a big radio host here in the U.S., he really latched on to the gossip-rich habit, that it was a poverty habit. And he said, for years, we've had a no gossip policy in the office because almost all the time gossip is bad. So even he, with his staff of 50 people, prohibited them from gossiping in the office.
I like that policy because, Tom, gossip leads to negativity. In fact, it comes from negativity anyway. So people often gossip pushing other people down because they don't feel good about themselves. Tom, we've spent lots of time talking about these habits, so I want to come back next week and go through more. So far, we've talked about the fact that negative people around you will drag you down, and if personally you're negative, you're only going to drag yourself down as well. So we want you to start developing more rich habits rather than poor habits and less negative habits. The negative habits we've discussed today are pessimism, doubt, fear, gossip, constant worry. Can we come back next week, Tom, and discuss a few more?
I look forward to it, Michael.